The other girl, I had a really close friend that she used to like to experiment with me, and then that was the only other longest girl situation that I've been in, but we were in like
Official?
emotionally.
Oh, emotionally invested?
Yeah, it was just more of a physical relationship.
Okay. So how about on the male side? Is it more or less the same then that they're typically coming to you?
No, I would say I'm a little bit like, I don't know, especially like a few years ago, I was just like a savage, I think. Like,
So you would go to them?
I developed a bit of an addiction to sex
Okay.
after the breakup.
And ways that you were maybe trying to cope through the situation, which, again, kind of put my therapist hat on just for a second. We know that's not really coping. It's more just avoiding, whatever the feeling is that I need to sit with. Like, I need to sit with the, I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm lonely.
At that point,
what do I do with this?
Yeah, I wasn't able to even grasp that concept.
So let me ask you a question on that concept, and I'm curious. I'm gonna actually ask you in both ways. Can you lay out for us, how do you think a man should approach you if he was interested in you? With full respect, we know you're in a relationship. And how would a woman approach you? Or maybe would you approach a woman if you were interested? However you want to
I
say it.
honestly I'm horrible at approaching women. Horrible. Like,
Okay.
they approach me. Like, I
Okay.
do not know how to, like, I joke around a lot, but
Okay.
like, I am not good at that whatsoever. It just always happens.
So somehow they find you. More or less.
Well, with my ex, we took a nap together and that was it.
Like where?
Because we were both at that workshop in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
So I was from New York, she was from California. So, like, I don't know, the first day we were there, we took a nap together, which was not a touchy-feely person at that point.
Okay.
So everything
It
just
blossomed
happened.
from there.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And then the other girl, I had a really close friend that she used to like to experiment with me, and then that was the only other longest girl situation that I've been in, but we were in like
Official?
emotionally.
Oh, emotionally invested?
Yeah, it was just more of a physical relationship.
Okay. So how about on the male side? Is it more or less the same then that they're typically coming to you?
No, I would say I'm a little bit like, I don't know, especially like a few years ago, I was just like a savage, I think. Like,
So you would go to them?
I developed a bit of an addiction to sex
Okay.
after the breakup.
As a part of it, what,
I think
maybe that healing and growing time?
That was the direct thing after the relationship that I
Okay.
noticed. I started smoking cigarettes again, and then all that.
So, okay.
Which cigarettes was the way I actually connected with my parents because my mom left, and I was always against cigarettes. And when she left, I started smoking cigarettes. So I was like, I didn't realize that until 2 years ago, where I was in the mountains, and I'm like, I am done smoking cigarettes. Like, I'm over it, whatever this is.
Yeah.
So I figured out what the association was.
No, that definitely makes sense. I mean, it can be like a way to kind of feel close to that person if that's a
Absolutely.
habit that they had.
Absolutely.
But when you say that, for that moment, you made me think of not just the opportunity to connect, but in ways that you were maybe trying to cope through the situation, which, again, kind of put my therapist hat on just for a second. We know that's not really coping. It's more just avoiding, whatever the feeling is that I need to sit with. Like, I need to sit with the, I'm hurt, I'm sad, I'm lonely. At that point, what do I do with this?
Yeah, I wasn't able to even grasp that concept. I can sit there for other people's healing at that point.
Okay.
I wasn't ready to even.
But you
dive
weren't giving
into
yourself
myself.
the space.
No. I was allowing myself to be in nature, and that's about it. Which was like
Okay.
the first step. But like, no, I didn't start doing the real work, and intermittently. But like up until like the last few years, where I'm just like, okay, something had arisen from the addiction that had come back up, and I was just like, so did I not? Well, if I haven't had a relationship that's actual, like, I didn't respect a lot of the men that I was with. Not like in the horrible way, but I wasn't vulnerable in any relationship.
So you
decade.
made sure you kept like that emotional wall up.
Oh my God, so many walls. There was like a maze of walls in there. Like, I just don't even know. I didn't realize until like even recently, where the guy that I'm with right now, he's just like, I don't ever want to give anybody like too much. Like, I feel like there is something that's very valuable about keeping some of who you are to you. Like,
And I can appreciate that. I think to me, that what your point is very well said. And I think about it in terms of the confidence and the trust you must have in that person that you have to build with that person.
Yeah.
Right. So starting off day one, I don't expect you to like pour your soul out to me because
and a lot of people want that now.
You got to feel comfortable. Like I'm huge on comfort, right? Especially like anytime you're sitting down, even right now, there's not an expectation that I'm going to get X amount of information from this person. It is slowly but surely over time, I want to create that environment where this person feels comfortable enough to want to volunteer that information. Not because I'm probing them.
No, holding
because
space
because
for
they're genuinely like,
vulnerability.
I really want to tell you this because it just makes me feel good to express this to you, right? But depending on the environments that we come from, a lot of us don't learn that, right, growing up. So then naturally it's really uncomfortable. Again, men, we typically don't do that because it's just never okay for us. But on top of that, going back to your relationship example, so when you're coming out of that and you're trying to figure out, okay, am I ready to deal with any of that stuff? And it sounds like you're saying initially for that initial time after you got out of it, you're like, no, I'm just gonna live and then maybe I'll get back to it at a later time.
Oh my goodness, yes. I didn't even realize what I was doing, but I was dealing with like some ulcers and stomach situations, so like I completely changed a lot of things, and like I was healing other things. Okay. So like Western medicine, I was healing the symptoms of what I was experiencing, not realizing that what I was experiencing was like a byproduct of what I was ignoring. So
realer words never said.
Getting
to the root cause, right? That's essentially what you said from a physical perspective. You got to get to the root cause. That's how you deal with stuff, so symptoms don't always have to keep manifesting.
So I worked at this macrobiotic school. I've never been so healthy in my life when I was there, and I felt like I was floating. And in that, I realized that I was not dealing with any of my emotions from childhood, from the relationship, from just being in society in a way that I didn't really understand who I was anymore, because I was still traveling and like kind of dismantling who I thought I wanted to be. Yeah. Especially before the relationship, where I'm like, that, I don't know why that was like the biggest thing, because I'm like, I didn't even feel like in the moment I identified as like somebody in media. Whereas like I don't understand why I held on to that for so long, like in my like after the breakup.
Oh, you haven't? You saying even now you haven't?
No, I have now. Like that's why I'm doing this now. Like I'm like, I did everything in my power to like just not be anywhere in media, except like maybe help out a friend plug in some speakers for a show, in which I'm not on camera. Hopefully.
I have a question then, and I'm trying not to pry, but I feel like you said something that in my mind like kind of clicked. When you said earlier talking about you kind of you agreed that you may have had some resentment following leaving your career and what you had built to go be in that relationship. Mm-hmm. Do you think that was somewhat a response why you then pulled back and were like, after the relationship was over, I don't want to do anything that had to do with that?
Absolutely. Okay. I never wanted to be that vulnerable again, but I didn't realize in that moment, because like I'm still like Jasmine, all free love, like I'll hug you, like I just want to make you feel like amazing in the moment, like I'm like dealing with my own trauma, but like everybody's having a good time.
Sure.
So I had to like break that down, because it's like I also want everybody to feel good, and like healing. That's what sparked the addiction sexually. It was because I realized I was making people feel good, and then I started getting high off making people feel good.
But then it circles around you actually dealing with your stuff.
Oh my God! And then you don't realize what you're doing. After a while, it's horrible.
And then, I always talk about.
I didn't have a guide. I didn't have YouTube. Like,
listen. We're creatures of habit too. Like when you get used to doing certain things, it just becomes your norm, even if it's unhealthy, even if you don't like it and you're trying to change it.
Dude, people had no idea who I was. Like, I had friends for a decade, and they didn't know any personal tidbits about me. They only knew what we experienced in each moment for about a decade.
Because you had that huge wall up.
Oh my goodness.
And listen,
I was like, it's only been in the last like 4 years that I've actually like, maybe 5, since 2018 is when I started to share, anything about myself. Because I'm like, first of all, like it's the only life I'm living. So like, why am I not? It's not stepping into myself.
No, you're 100% right. And to me, I had a sort of similar epiphany to what you're describing there. The way I sort of understand it, I kind of came at it initially from a parenting perspective, and then it's kind of grown from there. The idea that when you have a kid, your objective, this is just my opinion, your objective is not only to guide them and give them structure and wisdom and love and embrace and all of that, but to also share a lot about your lived experience, so that way hopefully they can benefit by avoiding some of the pitfalls that you had. Not all of them, because it's not possible, but some of them, right? But the key part that has to happen is we have to have that type of relationship.
Yeah, you have to develop trust.
We have to be able to talk about these things. They have to feel comfortable enough to actually tell me things that I might not want to hear, but I have to try to maintain that for them, right? So that way we can deal with stuff. Incredibly hard. But
a neutral space, because
I mean, where you're trying to, maybe you need to keep your own feelings in check, because I'm like, hey, we're trying to make this about you right now. But I say that because as I've gotten older and I've started to put that in perspective, that's also why I felt the need to do this, because I feel like for a lot of people out there, they don't have that go-to person. They might be in that space you were in for a decade, where I'm guarded
now
and I don't let nobody
videos
in.
on YouTube, and like I'm
right.
like, where were you?
Exactly. Like there's people like, and that actually makes me excited.
I feel like kids aren't even as grateful to have all the things.
Well, to be fair, they don't know. They don't know how. See, I try to make it clear. I'm like, hey, it was not always like this. Like it was very, very difficult.
And call my friends if I needed to talk to them.
Hey, I already talked about the flip phones. We had restricted text messages back then. You had to pay extra for them.
Oh my God! Well, it's like it was so expensive to text.
It's a very different time. But even from to your point about the openness aspect, like I don't think they will ever really appreciate, and I don't hold it against them. It's just they won't know, because right, they didn't live through that. But to me, the point is still the same. We can't learn and grow and evolve as individuals if we're not willing to share. So it's not necessarily just about your parents and your guardians and your family, because that's like, okay, those are your initial people that you deal with the most. But what about when you go to school? And what about when you go to a job? And what about when you want to form relationships with folks of whatever persuasion, right? If I don't feel comfortable doing those things much earlier on in my life, then it's going to be immensely harder when I want to do them later. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, breaking down all the programming to then build up, what it is that you want to be or who you really are.
Or not even
creating yourself, not finding yourself. But
or maybe yourself. Not even recognize that I have this gigantic wall here, and the hard part is you can't see it, right?
Especially
it's not present, right? Some of us are like, if I'm a people pleaser or I prioritize you guys ahead of me, then you're not gonna catch that. You're gonna be like, oh, so everything's great in your world, and I could be feeling horrible inside, or I'm dealing with a lot of stuff, but I'll never let you actually in to see that.
Yeah.
Right?
I was very good at that.
Same. I was really good at poker facing, being a good student, so that you didn't really want to look deeper.
Yeah.
That's what I learned in my upbringing, kind of keeping it so no eyes would come over here. But my point is that the vulnerability aspect that you discussed, for a lot of us, and we're the same age, for a lot of us, it might take us an extended period of time to kind of come to that realization. And my hope is that with us being here and people like yourself that are sharing and talking about these things, it makes it easier, to your point about having YouTube and these public platforms. So people can go and look and say, well, I don't have a mom that I can open up to because we don't have a great relationship. But I saw this woman, Jasmine, on this show, and she was talking about some stories that I resonated with, and that made me feel comfortable to actually go deal with my stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I think about for the guys, because I understand there's not a lot of us that are like in these spaces doing these things. So trying to create that environment where it's okay for them to talk about those things, because we're even less likely, more so than you all are. Nothing against women.
No.
The harder part is for us, just because we're actively taught to not do it.
You're taught to shut down, operate in your solar plex. Just shut it down. Just move.
Which has, a bunch of other issues that we end up inadvertently dealing with. But that's the reason why I believe no matter how uncomfortable it is, to actually be willing to share these stories.
Absolutely.
And to talk whatever we're comfortable sharing, right? Because that might be somebody's kind of jump on point. Their on-ramp into actually dealing with their stuff and actually trying to do healing work. Whether it's with a professional or not, although I would recommend you do it with a professional, because it's a little easier.
Oh, it took so long to get to this point.